The storm rolled over the battlefield camp, rain drumming against canvas and steel as lanterns flickered. Narrator described how William, the 28-year-old reluctant hero, stood frozen at the command tent's edge, his hand trembling on the hilt of his sword. General Marcus said, "The prisoner must be executed before dawn." William's breath caught as he looked at the bound man, a soldier he once trained beside, now accused of treachery. The betrayer within, Thomas 30, leaned closer with calm eyes and whispered, "Hesitation will cost us all." The innocent witness, Emily 19, shivered near the fire, clutching a blanket, her wide eyes filled with fear at what she should not have seen. Narrator pressed the weight of betrayal, describing how loyalty cracked under shadows, and thunder echoed like war drums. William whispered, "If I strike, I kill my friend. If I refuse, I betray my army." Narrator described how dawn threatened the horizon, the camp restless under sleepless skies. William walked alone, haunted by Marcus's command and Thomas's whisper. His mind replayed the prisoner's desperate eyes, each glance striking like a blade. Emily followed him silently, her steps hesitant, her young voice breaking. "Will you obey?" William clenched his fists, heart pounding louder than the war drums. He muttered, "Obedience is survival, but survival demands sacrifice." Narrator explained how silence between them deepened, filled with dread and unspoken truth. William felt the weight of a soldier's duty press against his chest like armor he could never remove. Narrator revealed how Marcus gathered the officers, his tone sharp as steel, his scarred face grim in the flickering light. He declared, "Discipline will hold this army together, or it will break apart." William stood at the back, sweat beading his brow, as Thomas's eyes lingered on him like daggers cloaked in calmness. William whispered, "Why me? Why now?" Narrator emphasized the tightening noose of suspicion, how betrayal crept unseen like smoke in a closed room. Emily peeked from the shadows, her fear deepening, realizing secrets were already poisoning the air. Narrator described how William returned to the prisoner's side, the rain easing into a mist. The prisoner lifted his head slowly, voice raspy, "You know I am no traitor." William's jaw tightened, his hand trembling once more. He muttered, "If I free you, I doom myself." Thomas emerged from shadows, his tone calm yet edged. "A leader must not falter." Emily gasped softly, unseen nearby, as the truth began to fracture her fragile trust. Narrator pressed how William felt crushed between loyalty, fear, and betrayal, each path leading to ruin. Narrator told how night faded into blood-red morning, camp shivering with tension. Marcus ordered soldiers to prepare the execution grounds, his voice echoing coldly, "Justice must be seen." William's chest tightened as he realized the choice was closing in on him like jaws of steel. Emily wept quietly into her cloak, whispering, "This is not justice." Thomas's lips curved slightly, unseen by others, satisfaction hidden in shadows. Narrator underlined how betrayal already seeped into the army's veins, and William felt trapped in a history already written by others. He whispered, "I cannot escape the weight of this dawn." Narrator described how the camp awoke to a gray dawn, the fog clinging to armor and tents like ghosts of the fallen. William walked slowly along the muddy rows, each step sinking as if weighed by guilt. His eyes carried shadows, searching for answers in the mist, but none came. Emily, fragile yet determined, followed him closely, whispering, "You carry more than a sword now." He turned, his voice breaking, "I carry the weight of his life." Thomas appeared silently, smile soft but eyes sharp, saying, "Burden shared is burden lessened." William shuddered at the thought of trusting him, knowing betrayal often wore a friendly face. Narrator pressed the ache in his chest as the army stirred around him, unaware of the storm within their leader's soul. Narrator explained how Marcus summoned William to the command tent, his scarred face etched deeper with fatigue. He said, "The men grow restless, and hesitation breeds rebellion." William lowered his gaze, heart pounding with shame. Thomas stood near the map table, his finger tracing enemy lines with deceptive calm. He whispered, The enemy will strike where we least expect, unless we act first. William stared at the parchment, seeing not strategy, but the reflection of a friend's broken eyes. Emily lingered outside, listening with trembling breath, afraid of decisions that smelled of blood. Narrator captured the weight of command pressing down, turning William from soldier to reluctant executioner of trust. Narrator told how William escaped into the forest edge beyond camp, seeking air free of suspicion. His chest heaved as he whispered, "I cannot live beneath these shadows." Emily followed, her voice small yet steady, "You are not alone." He looked at her, eyes glistening, and said, "Courage feels like chains, not wings." Birds scattered overhead as if echoing his unease. Thomas watched from a distance, half hidden, his calm gaze recording every crack in William's soul. Narrator spoke of how trust became a battlefield more dangerous than swords, and William felt hunted not by enemies beyond the lines, but by betrayal in his own shadow. Narrator revealed how Marcus confronted William before officers, his voice sharp as iron, "Obedience holds this army. Doubt will shatter it." William's throat tightened, his hands trembling as whispers grew louder in the ranks. Thomas spoke smoothly, "Strength comes from resolve, not hesitation." William's jaw clenched, fury flashing in his eyes, but words froze before they could escape. Emily clutched her cloak, heart racing, watching her hero unravel before accusing eyes. Narrator pressed the tension, describing how loyalty wavered like a candle flame in wind, and William felt condemned by silence more than by sword. Narrator described nightfall heavy with silence, stars hidden by thick clouds. William sat by the dying fire, his face pale, his soul heavy. Emily approached quietly, voice trembling, "Will you choose his life or theirs?" William's hand clenched around the hilt of his sword, sparks glowing faintly in the embers. He whispered, "Every path leads to ruin." Thomas appeared from shadows, eyes glowing with calculation, saying softly, "Some burdens are meant for men like you." Narrator captured how betrayal coiled tighter, unseen yet suffocating as William's gaze burned into the fire, seeing only the ghost of choices not yet made. Narrator described how the camp shook with the sound of war drums echoing from distant hills, each beat like a warning of storms to come. Marcus barked orders, his voice rough with urgency, "Prepare the men, the enemy tests our walls." William stood among the soldiers, his mind fractured, torn between duty and dread. He whispered to himself, "I fight for honor, yet live in betrayal's shadow." Thomas strode through the ranks with calm authority, placing a reassuring hand on shoulders, his voice smooth, "Trust in your leaders, and we cannot fall." Emily clung to the edge of the crowd, her eyes wide with fear, her voice trembling, "I feel the ground breaking beneath us." Narrator revealed how fear and suspicion tangled like vines, choking every heart before the battle even began. Narrator revealed how Marcus spread maps across the command table, his scarred finger pressing into enemy positions. He growled, "They move faster than expected, our spies failed us." William felt bile rise in his throat, hearing whispers of failure. Thomas leaned in, tone calculated, "We must strike their flank before they encircle us." His calm words carried venom of false intelligence, unseen by others. William muttered, "We march into shadows, blind." Emily, standing quietly in the tense corner, held her breath, sensing truth hidden beneath polished lies. Narrator pressed the air heavy with suspicion, the smell of damp parchment mixing with fear, while history sharpened its blade against their wavering trust. Narrator described how the army marched before dawn, mud clinging to boots, banners soaked with mist. William led a column, eyes darting with unease, whispering, "We walk into a snare." Thomas rode ahead, cloak flowing behind him, his calm words drifting back, "Victory demands courage, not doubt." Emily stumbled beside supply carts, clutching her cloak, her lips whispering prayers against the chill. Marcus's voice cut through the gloom, "Keep the line steady, discipline saves lives." Narrator emphasized the foreboding silence between drum beats, how the men's eyes shifted nervously, as if every shadow held betrayal. The forest loomed ahead, dark and endless, swallowing light, as history tightened its grip around them. Narrator told how whispers spread through the ranks, soldiers muttering that betrayal walked among them. William's chest tightened as he caught fragments. Spies. Lies. Death awaits. He turned to Thomas, who met his gaze with calm assurance, saying, "Do not let fear command you." William growled softly, "Fear is born of deceit." Marcus silenced the crowd with his booming voice, "Cowards feed enemies with doubt." Emily's eyes filled with tears, whispering, "They break apart before the battle begins." Narrator pressed how suspicion became heavier than armor, weighing every man, as thunder rumbled faintly from storm clouds above the darkening tree line. Narrator described how night fell upon the forest, torches struggling against thick fog. William sat near the fire, face pale with exhaustion, whispering, "I feel betrayal closer than breath." Thomas sat across, eyes glowing faintly, answering, "Trust me, and you will endure." Marcus sharpened his blade in silence, steel scraping louder than words, while Emily wept softly beside the embers. She murmured, "The fire fades like hope." William's heart clenched as he stared into flames, seeing not light but faces of the damned. Narrator pressed how the army's unity cracked further, firelight casting shadows long and jagged, like claws of history reaching to claim them all. Narrator described how the forest thinned into a clearing under a storm-heavy sky, lightning splitting the horizon like jagged blades. William stood rigid, mud streaking his cloak, muttering, "The silence before battle feels like a graveyard." Marcus raised his hand, commanding stillness, his scarred face grim. Thomas whispered, near William, "The enemy hides close, we must advance now." Emily clutched her cloak, whispering, "Something feels wrong, like eyes in the dark." Narrator revealed how fear gnawed at hearts as every tree seemed to breathe. And shadows grew longer, foreshadowing secrets that would soon rip the truth open. Narrator revealed how scouts stumbled back into camp, faces pale with terror, stammering, "We were misled, ambushed in the dark." Marcus's eyes flared with rage as he roared, "Who fed them our path?" William felt his chest tighten, knowing lies hid within their circle. Thomas spoke smoothly, "We cannot waste time on blame. The enemy gathers strength." William muttered bitterly, "You speak too quickly, Thomas." Emily gasped softly, clutching her cloak tighter as the atmosphere thickened. Narrator pressed how suspicion ignited like sparks, painting every face in firelight as betrayal's shadow loomed larger than the storm outside. Narrator described how Emily crept near the commander's tent later, her breath catching as she overheard whispers not meant for her ears. Thomas stood in the shadows, speaking low, "The army is blind. Soon they will break." Another cloaked figure replied, voice deep and chilling, "Deliver the false maps by dawn." Emily's eyes widened, her hands trembling as truth clawed into her heart. Narrator pressed how the innocent witness now held the knowledge that could destroy or save them, yet fear chained her tongue. She whispered to herself, "He is the betrayer within." Narrator told how Emily ran to William, her voice breaking, "He is not what he seems. Thomas feeds lies to the enemy." William grabbed her shoulders, whispering, "If this is true, you endanger us all by speaking." Emily's tears fell as she cried, "I cannot stay silent." Marcus entered, his eyes narrowing, "What lies spread in my camp?" William froze, torn between belief and doubt, his gaze fixed on Thomas standing calmly in the corner. Thomas said coldly, "Fear breeds wild tales." Narrator revealed how truth clashed with deception, tearing fragile trust apart under the weight of betrayal. Narrator described how the shadow figure entered camp openly at dawn, hood drawn back to reveal sharp features, eyes unreadable. He said, "The betrayal runs deeper than you think." Marcus snarled, "Another spy among us." William's chest heaved as he muttered, "Truth and lies look alike in this war." Emily clung to William's arm, whispering, "He is the one I heard with Thomas." Thomas's jaw tightened, though his face remained calm. Narrator pressed how the revelation shifted the battlefield from fields of blood to chambers of deceit, where shadows held more power than swords, and the army's fate bent beneath the weight of secrets. Narrator described how dawn broke crimson, the battlefield trembling under the sound of approaching horns. Marcus barked commands, "Form ranks." The enemy presses closer than expected. William's chest tightened, realizing Thomas's false intelligence had led them into a trap. He muttered, "Every step leads us further into his lies." Emily clung to his side, whispering, "You must speak the truth before all is lost." Thomas strode among soldiers, voice smooth, "Hold strong. Victory is within reach." Narrator pressed how the men's eyes shifted uneasily, their faith cracking as shadows of betrayal thickened around their once mighty army. Narrator revealed how the first clash shattered the morning, steel against steel, screams piercing the air. William fought with grim fury, whispering, "Every blow feels like striking shadows." Marcus roared, "Push them back or die on this ground." Emily scrambled among the wounded, her hands trembling as she pressed cloth to bloodied faces, whispering prayers. Thomas watched calmly from behind the front, eyes glinting with satisfaction at the chaos he had sown. Narrator pressed how betrayal did not strike with swords but with silence, leaving men blind to the hand guiding their ruin from within. Narrator described how panic spread when the enemy flanked from the forest, cutting into unprepared ranks. Soldiers screamed, "We were betrayed." Marcus swung his blade with rage, bellowing, "Stand or be slaughtered." William's heart pounded as realization seared through him. Thomas had led them here. He growled, "This is treachery, not misfortune." Emily's voice cracked as she cried, "Tell them before more die." Thomas raised his voice over the chaos, "Blame not me, but the cowardice of men." Narrator pressed how confusion turned into collapse, betrayal breaking them faster than blades. Narrator told how William confronted Thomas amid the bloodied field, mud spattered across his armor. He shouted, "You led us into slaughter." Thomas's calm mask cracked only slightly, his voice sharp, "Blame your weakness, not my words." Emily screamed, "I heard you. I saw you with the shadow." Marcus turned, fury burning in his scarred eyes, demanding, "Is this truth?" Narrator pressed the moment heavy with silence as soldiers paused mid-battle, torn between belief and denial, while betrayal hung like a blade above them all. Narrator described how chaos swallowed the field as truth unraveled too late. Soldiers broke ranks, some shouting, "Traitor," while others defended Thomas, blinded by his charm. Marcus roared in rage, swinging his blade as men fled in panic. William sank to his knees, whispering, "Our army dies not by steel but by lies." Emily fell beside him, tears streaking her face, crying, "What hope remains when trust is lost?" Thomas retreated into shadows, his calm voice echoing, "The war is already won." Narrator pressed how betrayal's poison had shattered an army, leaving only ashes of loyalty behind. Narrator described how night fell under a storm-laden sky, the battlefield now a graveyard of broken men and shattered steel. William stood in the rain, sword trembling, whispering, "This war is not of enemies but of betrayal." Marcus roared across the field, "Rally what remains, or we are nothing." Emily wept beside the wounded, her voice pleading, "Save them before hope dies completely." Thomas emerged from the shadows, calm voice slicing through the storm, "Surrender, William. History remembers victors, not fools." Narrator pressed how thunder split the sky as truth and deception prepared for final confrontation, steel and loyalty clashing like storm and fire. Narrator told how William charged forward, sword clashing against Thomas's blade, sparks flying like shards of fire in the storm. William shouted, "You sold us all for lies." Thomas answered coldly, "Survival demands sacrifice, even yours." Marcus struck enemies nearby with furious swings, his voice booming, "Crush the traitor before we all fall." Emily screamed, "William, don't let him break you." Narrator pressed how rain fell harder, washing blood into rivers of mud, as loyalty and deceit clashed in a duel that would decide not only the army's fate, but the shape of history itself. Narrator revealed how Thomas pressed William back, his blade striking with deceptive precision. He sneered, "Your hesitation makes you weak." William gritted his teeth, whispering, "Weakness is believing betrayal wins." Marcus bellowed, "Stand, William, stand, or we are all undone." Emily clutched her cloak, sobbing, "Please, don't let him fall." The storm howled as lightning lit their faces, each strike of steel echoing like thunder. Narrator pressed how the clash was no longer just a battle of swords, but of souls, loyalty fighting against corruption, hope against despair, under the unyielding gaze of history. Narrator described how William staggered to his knees, sword slipping as Thomas raised his blade high. Thomas hissed, "History will remember me, not you." William's voice broke, "History remembers sacrifice, not treachery." Emily screamed, rushing forward, "No!" Marcus roared, charging to intervene, but enemies pulled him back. Narrator pressed how time slowed as rain hammered the ground, betrayal ready to carve its mark forever. And William's eyes filled with both fear and defiance, knowing this was his last chance to strike truth into the heart of lies. Narrator told how William surged with final strength, grasping his sword and driving forward as thunder roared above. His voice rang out, "Betrayal ends tonight." Thomas's eyes widened in shock as steel pierced the storm between them. Marcus bellowed triumphantly, "Justice has spoken." Emily collapsed in tears, whispering, "You are more than fear, you are hope." Narrator pressed how lightning split the sky one last time as Thomas fell, his calm mask broken at last, and William stood trembling in the storm, blood and rain washing together, a man marked by sacrifice and the terrible cost of truth. Narrator described how the storm faded into silence, leaving the battlefield soaked in blood and rain. William stood unsteady, sword lowered, eyes hollow with exhaustion. Marcus placed a firm hand on his shoulder, voice rough, "You have saved us, but at terrible cost." William muttered, "Victory feels heavier than defeat." Emily approached slowly, her face streaked with tears, whispering, "You stood against betrayal, and still you stand." Narrator pressed how the dawn broke with pale light, not of triumph, but of mourning as the remnants of the army gathered in fractured silence, staring at the ruin of trust. Narrator revealed how soldiers buried their dead, each shovelful of earth falling like a drumbeat of sorrow. Marcus said grimly, "Their sacrifice demands we march forward." William's gaze lingered on the graves, whispering, "Their blood was spilled by deceit, not honor." Emily knelt by a fresh mound, her voice breaking, "I will not forget their faces." Narrator pressed how silence weighed heavier than words, torches burning low as smoke curled into the cold morning sky, the air thick with grief. Narrator described how William entered the ruined command tent, its canvas torn, maps scattered like lies across the floor. He whispered, "This is what betrayal leaves behind." Emily followed quietly, her voice trembling. The truth destroyed more than the enemy ever could. Marcus studied the torn maps, growling, "We rebuild, but never forget the traitor's hand." Narrator pressed how the air hung heavy with smoke and silence, as if history itself paused to record the scars of treachery etched upon the souls of the survivors. Narrator revealed how William walked to the prisoner's grave, rain beginning to fall softly again. He knelt, pressing his hand into the damp earth, whispering, "I could not save you, but I will carry your truth." Emily's eyes glistened as she murmured, "He lives in the honor you chose to fight for." Marcus stood behind them, silent, his scarred face softened by grief. Narrator pressed how the ground itself seemed to breathe sorrow, each raindrop echoing with memory, as loyalty's price was sealed in silence beneath the soil. Narrator described how the army broke camp, smoke rising from dying fires, soldiers walking in silence toward an uncertain horizon. William stood apart, gazing into the mist, whispering, "We march on, but nothing marches with us." Emily placed a trembling hand on his arm, saying, "You are still standing, and so is hope." Marcus called out, "Move forward, history waits for none." Narrator pressed how William turned, his figure fading into smoke and silence, the memory of betrayal carved forever in his soul, a reluctant hero bound by sacrifice.